All right, let's talk about GPT-5. So OpenAI just came out and basically admitted that their brand new, shiny AI model was, well, a little cold when it first launched. So what are they doing? They're giving it a whole personality update to make it friendlier. But here's the big question, right? Does making an AI warmer actually make it better?
Is this a real improvement or is it just some clever PR? That's really the heart of what we're digging into today. We're going to break down exactly what this change is, why people weren't happy to begin with, and what this whole thing could mean for how we all end up talking to AI in the future.
Okay, so to really get why this update even happened, we've got to rewind the clock a little bit, back to the launch of GPT-5. And let's just say it was not exactly the brilliant debut everyone was hoping for. I mean, the hype for this thing was through the roof. Everybody, and I mean everybody, was expecting this to be the next giant leap. A totally groundbreaking tool that was going to change the game all over again. But then, even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, had to come out and admit things weren't exactly perfect. He said the rollout was a little more bumpy than we'd hoped. That's a pretty big admission, right? It's basically saying, yeah, we didn't quite stick the landing. So what does bumpy actually mean here? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. There was this huge gap between what people expected and what they actually got. They were waiting for this cutting-edge AI, but the feedback that came pouring in was that it felt too blunt, even too robotic. Get this, some users actually started switching back to the older GPT-4. Why? Because it just felt more natural to talk to. In a way, it felt like a step backward. So with all this feedback coming in, OpenAI didn't just sit on their hands. Nope, they listened and they announced a fix that was aimed right at the heart of the problem, its personality. And honestly, for a company this big, that's a pretty fascinating move. Think about it. They actually listened to the community and decided to perform what you could almost call digital personality surgery on their biggest product. And these were their exact words. They wanted to give it a warmer and friendlier personality. Notice they didn't say more powerful or more accurate. The focus was entirely on warmer and friendlier. So, okay, what does that actually look like when you're using it? All right, let's try to define this because warmer can mean a whole bunch of things, right? Thankfully, OpenAI was pretty quick to clarify what we should, and maybe more importantly, what we should not expect. So right off the bat, we're not talking about some kind of fake, over-the-top flattery. The changes are actually way more subtle. It's about weaving in these small, encouraging phrases. Instead of just spitting out an answer, it might start with, "That's a good question." Or if you're brainstorming, it might say, "Great start." The goal is to make it feel more like a collaborator and less like you're just putting a coin in a machine. But of course, the moment you hear friendlier AI, a big red flag probably pops into your head, right? Is this thing just going to become a digital suck-up? Is it just going to tell us what we want to hear, agreeing with everything just to be pleasant? Well, that concern has a name, and it's a huge deal in AI. It's called sycophancy. Basically, it's the tendency for an AI to just agree with you, even if you're totally wrong, just to be more pleasing. And yeah, that's a massive problem if you want an AI that's actually truthful. Now, OpenAI saw this concern coming a mile away. They've been very clear that their own internal tests showed no increase in this kind of behavior. So, phew. And to really hammer this point home, OpenAI's VP of Product, a guy named Nick Turley, he came out and explained the thinking behind all of this. And what he said really gets to the heart of it. He explained that the original GPT-5 was just very to the point. This update isn't about changing the brains of the operation, it's about making it feel warmer. The core intelligence, the accuracy, none of that changed. It was purely about the communication style. Okay, so you might be thinking, why go through all this trouble just for tone? It seems kind of superficial, right? Well, it turns out that how an AI feels to interact with is becoming just as important as what it can actually do.
Yeah, this isn't just about making us feel warm and fuzzy. It is a really strategic move. There are basically three big reasons for it. First, the human experience. If an AI feels cold or abrasive, you're just not going to want to use it every day. Second, that experience builds trust, and trust is absolutely crucial with this tech. And finally, let's be real, competition. The AI market is heating up, and you just can't afford to be seen as the cold, robotic one.
And speaking of competition, OpenAI isn't playing this game alone. You've got rivals like Claude from Anthropic and Gemini from Google, and both of them often get praised for being more conversational and approachable. So by making GPT-5 warmer, OpenAI is basically playing catch-up on the personality front, making sure they don't get left behind as the unfriendly option.
So when you step back and look at the whole story, the bumpy launch, the user complaints, this whole personality patch, it really points to a much, much bigger question. One that, frankly, we're all going to have to figure out.
And that question is, what do we really want from our AI? Do we want a warm, friendly collaborator that feels almost like a person? Or should it be a purely efficient, totally neutral tool? This little update from OpenAI, it might seem small, but it's one of the first big moves in a debate that's going to define how we relate to technology for years to come. There really is no easy answer here, but it's definitely something to chew on.